All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to this week's episode of Kind of a Bitch. Today, I want to talk about something that has been in my mind because it's what's going through my friend group, and it's honestly, I think it's what's going through just a lot of people in my general vicinity right now. So we're going to talk about it. But the first thing I want to say is there are few things, I think, that make people angrier than when women, and we could say people, but I'm going to refer to women specifically because those are the people who I'm primarily talking about here, who actually love themselves. I'm not talking about women who are good at self care, good at taking themselves for massages or whatever, but I'm talking about people who are genuinely content and at peace with who they are, their quirks, their characters, their bodies, whatever, because when you are 100% at peace with yourself, you don't need all the outside validation, all the fluff. You know what I'm saying? And that kind of self love, I don't know, I just think it can really rattle people. And I've been having this conversation with my friends and my friend group. We're all in our 30s and we're experiencing kind of the is this considered the midlife crisis? I don't know if it's really called that anymore, but the career shifts, the friend breakups, the relationship breakups, the conversation around kids, or maybe they've had kids. And so the identity shift is happening. All of these transitions make you look at your life through like a sharper lens. You know what I mean? And I think what I'm noticing is that when something really unexpected happens like that, like a breakup or a job loss or something like that, it can completely rip us, throw us off our center that we once felt really grounded in. I've had more friends who are questioning their worth. And honestly, like I have felt very similarly here as well, and who they are. And I I feel for them and I feel for myself because I think it's a tough thing to kind of move through. And so I've been asking myself, am I confused because I don't like where I am in my life? Or am I confused because I've tied my worth to the wrong things? So anyway, today I want to talk us through a couple of things that I've been writing down over the last few weeks, and I'm going to call them the 4 R's. I want to say I had a couple of R's in another episode as well, but this is going to be a new one, okay? Just stick with me here. I'm calling them reframe, root, and or realign. I haven't decided which one yet. Reimagine and retrain. These are some of the ideas, the methods that I've been trying on myself, that I've been talking about with my friend group, that I think are going to really help you and me come back to myself and continue kind of moving forward even when things feel destabilized, or even when you feel like the person who you think you are, maybe you've lost her. Okay? So, let's get into it, shall we? The first R, I'm calling reframe. Now, the reason this has come up is because I was down visiting some of my friends, and I was working with one of my friends on redoing her kind of a resume. Okay. We were talking about job transitions and, you know, finding finding new opportunities and kind of having to pitch ourselves in different ways. And I think the thing that has always fascinated me about this particular topic is because so many of our trained skills are not skills that are viewed as marketable in a corporate workspace. And that is kind of interesting to me because when I think about all the skills that we learn as performers, I think that they can be, now I understand they can be easily translated. But for someone who is still, I don't know, in the process of figuring out how to reframe their skills in ways that could be marketable for someone outside of their industry, I think it's a learned behavior, if you will. So reframing those types of skills, it's not about spinning a negative into a positive. Okay. It's about asking sharper questions that will help you see your abilities more clearly. So, for example, one of the things that I use, especially when I'm working with folks who are reframing, performers who are reframing their resumes into something that could be used in a more corporate work environment, is we talk about what kind of stuff they did. And something that I did is I was a swing. And what that meant for me is that, yes, as a performer, it looked like I could memorize multiple scripts at a time. It meant that I could multitask. So I was performing, but I was also watching what the other people who I was covering were doing on the stage. Because for almost all of my swinging career, I think I've done now 4 contracts as a swing. And I was on stage while still understudying people. So I couldn't just stand off stage and learn someone else's part. I had my own track that I performed every night while also needing to know someone else's track so that if they went off mid show, I could jump in. Right. And I think as a performer, once you learn that, you go, wow, that's great. You have that skill. People see you're a swing. They want to hire you as a swing. It's a very valuable skill. But for a corporate person, they'll go, I don't really know. I don't know what that means. So I spent a lot of time asking myself, okay, what was it about that made me good at it? What skills within that job, if we really distilled them down into kind of basic skills, now it's going to look more like, again, I mentioned multitasking, but you can use that, of course. Efficient problem solving, quick thinker, on your feet thinker, working as a team, right? All of these things that you might not necessarily think of as a swing can be transitioned very quickly into something that's more for a corporate work environment. So as I mentioned, I was helping a girlfriend do this. And number one, what I found in that moment was it is so helpful if you are in the reframe process to have somebody else in your court who can bat that ball back and forth, someone who can reflect to you, because oftentimes it is very hard to see your own characteristics, your own values, your own strengths and skills, because you are the one that's in the storm. You're in the eye of the storm. You can't actually see how big it is. So in those days that I'm sure many of us are having where it is hard to love ourselves because perhaps we don't know ourselves, sitting down to really go through, okay, what are the skills that I have and how can I reframe them? At least for me, especially if you're someone who's going through this in a work situation, I think can add a lot of confidence and can also show you that things are not as black and white as they might seem. Something else that I will share is a couple of prompts for you if this is something that you want to start doing, reframing what you are good at. I had someone ask me once, when was the last time that you felt truly successful? We were talking about career. So that was the word, successful. I suppose you could also use competent or at peace or I don't know. That's where I will stop. No shame, no fear, just fully in it, right? And when I asked myself that question, I knew my answer, and you have to think of a very specific moment, not just throwing out like, "Oh, when I was 25 at," no. I want you to go, when I was standing on that stage, I had performed the show 100 times. I remember looking out in the audience and seeing these 2 men sitting in the front row. They were smiling, one of them had glasses, and I remember looking down and singing at them with my big wig on and these huge ass shoes and all this stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, this is so fun. This is the type of interaction that I want to have with people. I feel good at my job. I feel like they are having a great time, right? I can see the picture of the moment in my head. And that's what I would want you to do is find something that is so very clear because I want you to be able to feel that feeling, to give yourself the experience of the emotional experience when you think of that memory. The next thing that I want you to think about is what talent or strengths were you using in that moment, right? Just another thing that you can pull on to kind of show yourself how valuable, how worthy you truly are. And then lastly, and what does this say about you that perhaps you haven't given yourself credit for? I'll leave you with that. A last little small tool for me personally, again, if you were in the beginning of this process and you're starting with Reframe and you're struggling to figure out even where to start, is that I love a personality test. I got to be honest. I love them. I think they're really fun. I think it is so fun to look at my zodiac stuff, my astrology. I think it is so exciting to take the disc test, to take the, what is that called? Not, well, Enneagram is one where you can get ENFJ or INFJ. And You know what I'm saying? One of those personality tests, because I think that when you take them, they don't define you, but I think they can give you language for what you might not notice in yourself. And so when you read it, again, it's an awesome opportunity, almost like having a friend, having somebody else reflect back to you, right? If you're not able to do it for yourself, uh, taking tests like that can be incredibly valuable, in my opinion, because it really will help you connect those dots a little bit differently. The last thing I'll say on this, reframing is about collecting that proof about who you are so that you can see it in a new light. Because we want to believe those things about ourselves. I don't just want it to be based on other people's opinions. I want you to see it for yourself, because that is how we are going to start the next process. That brings me to root or realign. Again, creator's choice. I haven't decided. So pick whichever one feels right for you. Root or realign. This part is about figuring out who you are separate from the roles that you play, like your job title, your relationship, wife, husband, mother, your family, right? Those things matter 100%. And I know that a lot of people see their identity in that role, but those jobs, they're not your essence. You know what I'm saying? I I always think about this because there was this book that I read long ago. You might know it. It's called The Host or The Hosts. And it was a young adult book. And then it got made into a movie that I don't think did very well. And it was, I believe, by the same author who did Hunger Games. And in the book, come with me on this journey. In the book, there are human beings are basically hosts, and it's told from the perspective of a soul. It's going back and forth between the perspective of a soul and the perspective of a human living on earth. And the idea is that souls, they can travel to many different universes and planets. There's the planet of music, there's the planet of like, crazy purple sea creatures, there's like the planet of clouds, and there's all these different universes. And the idea is that these souls will go to those places, and they will make one of the beings on that planet their host. They will inhabit that creature. And so, what happened? Well, those hosts came to Earth and they are inhabiting human beings. But the tricky bit is that they always thought that humans were just shells. And they're not. They had their own beings inside. We have our own soul inside. And a picture that the author had written that was talking about souls is that souls can recognize each other when they're in their natural form, which is like this silvery, uh, globulous, no shape, iridescent, floaty thing that has no body, no whatever. And they can recognize who is who based on their essence, based on those qualities, but they don't have a body or a form or like a job or anything to identify them by. And I think about that all the time, because if I were a soul, just a soul with no shell, and I got dropped into a bowl with all of my best friends and my family, like, would I recognize those floating globulous creatures? Would I see, would I know my friends, my family's, my husband's soul without the shell, right? And I just find it fascinating because I love the picture. So anyways, that soul, that's you without the titles. And that's kind of what I'm trying to get to here. And I have recently watched friends kind of come unmoored after layoffs, after splits, after friendship breakups. And I have felt it myself. And I think it is hard because you start to ask yourself, well, who am I without this title, without this role, without this job? And I think it's important that we root into who we are, and how do we remember. So this rooting or this realigning is how you get back there after being thrown off. I've been having this conversation with again, my girlfriends, as always, everyone, if you don't have a set of girlfriends, that it's high time you get some. But learning to separate identity from job. And I think one of the things that gets a little messy is when you do find so much joy and happiness in your job, when it gets taken away, you become very unclear about who you are. And the same thing can happen in a relationship when you feel so much joy and happiness in a relationship and who you are as a couple. If that gets taken away, whether that is by choice or by nature, people lose themselves. They cease to see who they are without that person, because yes, there are aspects of our personality that bloom with another person, whether they're your partner or your friend. Uh, and just because that person is no longer there to reflect those aspects of your personality back to you does not mean that they still aren't yours, that they aren't pieces of you that have simply come alive because of the influence of somebody else. And so we've been talking a lot about how to kind of find those pieces again, and how to reinstate them in your life, especially if they were something that you liked. Because it's different, I think, if you have a partner or a friend who brought out the pieces that you don't like. Yeah, I think it's different. Another thing that I think about here is, in college, welcome to theater school, we had this thing called Very Me Day. We had 3 days actually. It was Very Nobody Day, Very Me Day, and Very Not Me Day. And the idea was that on Very Nobody Day, you showed up as nobody. Everyone had to dress in the same color. You couldn't put on makeup. You couldn't do your hair. You basically had to come. And then we did an exercise, a movement exercise where pretty much everyone moved exactly the same way. And if you have been out in the world, which I'm sure if you're listening to this podcast, you've been out in the world, you know that nobody moves the same. Everyone has their own specific characteristics in their movement. And so that was Very Nobody Day. But Very Me Day and Very Not Me Day, the idea was to come as the fullest version of yourself, everything that makes you you. And then Very Not Me Day was to come as the opposite of you. And if you think about it, that's actually very hard. And I remember my boyfriend at the time, in college, when we were getting ready to do Very Me Day, he had said, "Well, I'm just going to run around and I'm just going to like kiss you. I'm just going to, love you and kiss on you." And I was like, "Oh, oh." Also, mind you, we were slightly on the downhill at this point. But I had said to him, no, 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 because I'm not part of you. I am not you. You kissing me is not like who you are. That is, you are a separate being who happens to love me. And like our partnership is one thing, but like our partnership is not what makes you you. And I remember trying to describe, he was totally thrown off by this. And I remember, I think it actually started a fight now that I'm bringing myself back. But I remember being so thrown off because I very clearly felt my individuality within that relationship. I felt who I was. Of course, I loved this person and we had been together for however long, but I remember thinking, no, no, like you have to get so clear on who you are because again, me as your partner is not your personality. That job title is not your personality. And anyway, I'm just thinking about this as I think about ways to root and realign. Additionally, I just listened to, I watched about half of the Taylor Swift podcast on the New Heights podcast, which is very fun. I highly recommend you go and listen to it. But something that she had noted, and which I really loved, and I think is so necessary, is she had said this bit because she was talking about caring what people think of you and kind of letting people's opinions of you get in the way of knowing who you are. And she had said, number one, not everyone is as invested in you as you are. And also was mentioning that a lot of people have not invested in you enough to have enough capital for you to care what they think. Not enough people or people have not invested enough in you to have enough capital for you to care what they think of you, which I'm like, girl, that's really nice. But she had also said, if you are relying on what others say about you consistently and what those external titles are, you are creating an ecosystem where you are the centerpiece of the table, which is not true. People are not looking at you. People are most likely often not defining you by your titles in the same way that you potentially are. And if they are, then I suppose the question is, how are you showing up, my queen? You know? because I don't know, I think that people often do. If we identify with our titles, if we make our entire personality our titles, then people tend to follow suit. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, because I guess all I'm trying to say with that is T Swift coming at us with the real world wisdom that these little lines that she has said, it I think will help. It helps me when I think about those lines, ground me in the fact that my worth, my self does not come from other people's interpretation or opinion, and it cannot. So my prompt for you as you try and root in or realign with those aspects of yourself, you've just maybe taken those personality tests, you've found some of that language, but now it's time to actually get in the nitty gritty with who you are. So ask yourself those questions. When do I feel most me, most at peace, most mine? What moments in my life or in my day feel like they belong only to me, like purely just for me? And if nobody was watching, if not a soul was watching me, what would I do? Like, what would I be doing in my day? If money was not involved, what things would I be enjoying? If nobody was watching me, what things would I do for fun? And lastly, if people only knew me for my character, not my resume, for my character, or maybe for my values, what would they say? All right, now we're moving on to a little bit more of the action, I think. Number 3 is reimagine. So you've rooted, you've kind of figured out who you are, what your values are, whatever that looks like. And you might start to think, okay, so I kind of know who I am, or I can see it. I have a clearer picture, but my current life isn't working for me. This is where we get to reimagine. And I think about this all the time because there are aspects I feel like I'm constantly optimizing. I'm thinking to myself, wow, this actually doesn't feel great. This something isn't feeling like it's fully aligned in here. So this is where we get to dream a little bit. This is about throwing away the shames, loosening the shoulds of it all, and then dreaming past what you think is currently realistic. Okay, full disclosure, you guys, I have been listening to Joe Dispenza. I've listened to a couple of interviews and then I've done a few of his meditations because your girl decided to start meditating because I was tired of constantly being in a state of anxiety, which I'm learning. I'm basically teaching myself, I'm training myself to stay in a state of anxiety. And I would really like to train myself out of that because I'm sure, as you all know, it's not a very fun place to be. So I've started listening to some Joe Dispenza stuff. And I will say, I do think he has the potential to become a cult leader. Okay. I do think that. However, he's not there yet. Doesn't sound like anyone's gotten hurt. Some of his followers are very devout. I think those are maybe the freaky deaky people. But the bigger part is that a lot of his meditations and the way that he speaks about reimagining your life and using meditation and neuroplasticity to get you there is fascinating to me. So if you are at all interested, I highly recommend, even if you listen to one of his audiobooks or listen to him on some people's podcasts, it is fascinating. So he talks about living as though your future self already exists, because the idea is if you can imagine it and if you can feel it, if you can actually feel it, your brain and your body will start to wire themselves to move towards that future. So, as I mentioned with the anxiety thing, something he had said in a podcast, this is not a meditation, this was a podcast, is he had said, basically, we've wired ourselves to be in this state. And I've been asking myself, I've been talking to my therapist, God, every day I wake up and I go, oh God, I need to be worried. I need to be panicking about something. Okay, I actually don't feel panicked about something. So I must be missing something. What am I missing? And I start to sift through my day and I check my phone and all the stuff that I'm getting myself, I'm pushing myself into an anxious state. And I don't need to be there. But my body, my heart is more familiar with that state of being. So it continues to move me back to that state. And so what he's saying is you need to rewire yourself to get more comfortable being in a state of relaxation, being in a place where you can fully calm down, recharge, take a breath. And how do you do that? You meditate. sorry, that's a spoiler alert. You need to meditate and be in that state of relaxation so that your body learns that it's actually okay to exist in a calmer, more aligned state. Okay. And what I love about some of his teachings, and again, if you are not a Joe Dispenza person, that is totally fine with me, but I think that is very helpful for this reimagining phase, if you will. Uh, as you start to think about what it is that you want, the intention. So if that intention is making more money or is mm, having more job freedom, okay, you need to attach a why, a feeling, an emotion to that. So just like if I had an anxious moment, I could do it at any time of day. I can think about an awkward conversation or an anxious moment that I had, and my body will have a physiological reaction to it. My heart will start beating. I maybe will start sweating. I'll start to spin, right? I'm literally giving myself a physical reaction. So the idea is that if you can put yourself back in a state where you can imagine, instead, oh, actually, all of my clients love me. And, I imagine I'll take you through kind of this one here. In fact, my clients, I get to hand over the key and my clients look at me and they tell me, wow, you're honestly so incredible. We've loved what an intentional broker you are. We loved how honest you've been. You've just been so easy and fun to work with. And you made this home buying process so relaxing for us. And we felt so scared. And so when I start putting myself in that scenario, I can literally feel my heart warming. I can feel my body start to feel grateful and to grow, right? I can feel that feeling. And so his whole idea is that you need to find that vision, whatever that is, that thing is that you want. And then when you sit with it, you imagine it, you really play it out in your brain. You really play it out. And your heart, your body will start to follow suit. Okay. But the important bit is you have to have that emotion attached. You have to feel that feeling. And again, if you're not someone who's super imaginative, that is a-okay. There's so many different ways you can start to do this, whether that is doing a meditation of his, or a coach of mine at one point had me write what did he call it? He called it a vision story. And I loved that. And the idea is that you go in and you write out your perfect day. Now, I am not talking wake up, go to the gym, come home, do some work, eat a really good burger, watch a movie and go to bed. No, I am talking. I come to consciousness lying on my back. I can hear birds off in the distance. I can see the light beyond my eyelids, turning the inside of my eyelids a warm red color. I know that it's daytime. I can feel the soft Egyptian cotton sheets under my skin. I can hear, um, my husband rummaging around downstairs, and I can smell coffee, right? You literally bring yourself every detail of the day. My vision story was like, I don't know, I think it was like 9 pages long. Okay. And by writing all of that out and getting very specific, you do feel this like, wow, that's so nice. And that emotion that follows is that why. So having a why, having that emotion that is there connected to the intention, to the goal, to the life that you want is highly important. Okay. So a couple of prompts for all of you who are listening. If that did not do it for you, ask yourself a few questions like, if everything worked out in my favor, what would life look like? That's where your vision story can come in, or perhaps it's a smaller detail. What about this one? If I wasn't afraid of disappointing anyone, what would I choose? And I really like that one. For anyone who has some issues with people pleasing, hello, eldest daughter, right here. I have the hat on. If you're listening, you can't see it, but if you're on YouTube, you can see. And then last one, if shame wasn't in the picture, what would I dream of? If shame wasn't in the picture, what would I dream of? I just love those questions. I think it is so important to ask ourselves questions like that because I think it illuminates the things that we might be missing, the things that we might not be aware that we are holding ourselves back on because we are afraid of either the box that we put ourselves in, we are afraid of or we are simply limited by something that we did to ourselves. I just think these are such good questions to be asking. So again, reimagining, this is about giving yourself the permission to want more than, or to want better than what you currently have, especially if you're in a place where you're like, I just don't love myself. I just don't feel good about the body, the situation that I'm in. It's giving yourself permission to want more and to picture it vividly enough that it starts to feel real. And lastly, retrain. This is where that imagination has to turn into action. Retraining is both a very practical process, but also a mental process. On the practical side, it's about actually building the habits that support the life you reimagined. And the trick about all of that is to work backwards. So the example here is okay. So say you want to wake up early. Okay. So then the idea is okay, I got to set my alarm for 5 a.m. or whatever time you decided. And again, ideally, you already have reimagined. So you understand why you're doing this. I don't like the random rules about people who wake up at 5 a.m. or better. They're not. I love you so much. If you're an early bird, congratulations. But you know what I'm saying? It's you, if you need to have a why. If you're like, I want more time in the day and that's the only time for me, then live the dream. But I'm saying you need to have a why. You need to have an emotion attached to that why to make you want to do it. You're not going to want to do it if it's just an arbitrary goal. Okay. So if the idea is, okay, I have my why, but to do that thing, I want to wake up at 5 a.m. Great. So my alarm needs to be set for 5 a.m. Awesome. If my alarm is going to be set for 5 a.m. and I need at least 8 hours of sleep, then what time do I need to be in bed asleep? Okay. So that's the time. Now, if I was going to be in bed by that time, how much earlier do I have to start my nighttime routine so that I can actually be asleep by that time? Okay, this is it. So if I'm going to turn off my phone by this time so that I can start my nighttime routine, then what things do I have to change in my day? Whether that is changing, shifts with my husband so that I'm not doing the, XYZ shift with the kids, or does that look like I got to tell my clients, hey, like my bedtime is actually 7 o'clock. So unless we are actively negotiating, I will not be online post 7 p.m. For any of my clients listening, my time is 9 o'clock. Okay. Unless we are actively negotiating. And I love you so much. Thank you for being here. So you work it backwards. Okay. So then you're asking yourself, what boundaries do I need to set? What communication do I need to have to actually make that happen? The retraining is about building that little ripple effect. And on the mental side of this, I heard this phrase the other day that I'm obsessed with. This creator said that her therapist told her, I love hearing what other people's therapists say to them. I just need you to know it is one of my favorite things. If your therapist has given you like a absolutely life-changing realization, I need you to send it to me. I need you to send it to me. Okay. One-liners. I'm not talking about like an entire thing. I'm talking about catchphrases that I can put on my computer. Okay. But what her therapist said to her, because she was having one of those, I can't do it. I'm feeling so stressed. Like I'm feeling blocked. I don't have the energy. I'm blah, 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 whatever the thing is. Her therapist would say, choose past it. Choose past it. Instead of sitting in the story of, I feel blocked. I'm not creative. I'm scared to send the pitch. I just don't want to hit send. You choose past it. You write the script anyways. You hit send anyways. You say like you choose past the fear. Okay, choose past the block and say I'm going to do it anyway. You refuse to let the inner critic, the ugly voices, all of those little fears and things that run around inside of your brain, you refuse to let them run the show and you choose past it. So the daily practice of all of this is each day I want you to try and notice one sabotage thought. Honestly, mine this morning, I'm not going to lie to you. I woke up, upon opening my eyes, I heard myself start to be like, what if insert client one and two think that I'm not doing my job? What if they think that I'm not doing enough and that I sent them homes, but we didn't look at any homes this weekend. And I know they didn't respond to me, but like, should I have followed up and pushed them harder? What if they think that I'm not doing enough? That was my thought upon waking up this morning. And I heard myself say to myself, choose past it. And then I went, or what if they think I'm great? Like I just was like, and we're going to let it go. We're going to say, that's silly. I don't know who that voice is. Why was I starting to think about that to myself? upon waking. That's so cruel. And so it truly is just saying, like, and we're done. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Okay. So think of that one sabotage thought and immediately take action that contradicts it. So whether that is truly, I had this no contact book once because I was going through a gnarly breakup, and it said to ask yourself, to tell yourself, it doesn't, if you started to ruminate or, replay conversations or whatever, to say, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, and go do something else. And I still do it with other random things because I know that my brain is always trying to do lots of funny stuff with me. So I got to say, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, it doesn't matter, and move on. So if you can find that, like, a small thought, if you're blocked, like, write one sentence. If you are scared, send one text. If you're tired, like, man, stretch for 5 minutes, right? Anything, any action is how you retrain both your brain and your habits. Your body does have to follow you in that way. So, retraining is choosing to act in alignment with your future self, with what you want to be, with how you want to be and who you know yourself to be, not your fear. Wow, I feel better even after writing all this out. This feels great. I hope you feel the same way that I do. So, all I'm saying is, bitches who love themselves are not perfect. Okay. We got to add the bitch thing in here somewhere. And they're not arrogant. Okay. They have just learned how to reframe, how to reimagine, how to root in themselves until they don't need constant outside validation to know who they are, until they don't need the whole world to clap for them because they're clapping for themselves. Okay. And that is what makes those women unshakable. So, if you are listening and you are in a season of questioning, I don't know, maybe you're with me in this season, maybe you are mid breakup, maybe you are totally changing careers, maybe you're just really tired of the way that life is going at the current moment. I think these 4 practices are things that you can try on and potentially return to if you gotten off track, and see how much better you feel in the near future. So, my challenge for you, pick one of these R's and just try it a little bit. Try it a little bit. Reframe a moment, root back to yourself. Try and meditation if you're feeling so inclined. Reimagine a bigger dream for your life. Retrain one silly habit or one sabotaging thought. And then ask yourself, what would shift if I stopped apologizing for loving, for even liking who I am in here? That's all I have for you today, everybody. Thank you so much for being here whenever and wherever you are listening. If you have any questions, please, good Lord, send them my way. I love hearing from the folks who are listening. If there's something in here that resonated, if you want recommendations for what I'm trying, please send me a DM, leave us a review, shoot me an email. You know how to find me. Other than that, enjoy the rest of your beautiful day, and I will talk to you later. Bye.